Well, I got my start in the craft shows like all persons of the 70s, and many of them, of course, today. And I learned from the potters back in the early 70s that you had to have a production item if you wanted to be able to survive. So I designed, patterned after the old cafe sugar shaker with a glass base and a steel or metal top, a hollow wooden sugar shaker and a pair of salt and peppers that went with it. And I turned probably about 5,000 of those pieces in 2.5 years, and that was my way of really learning how to turn and my way of surviving at that time. There were a number of turners around my country coming to and going to different countries, and their instructors coming to our country to demonstrate. Ireland had their own national organization, which was formed in '81. And then in '84, we had a conference at Aramont Craft School in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, where we had started a program through Mark Lindquist's intervention back in 1981. And at that conference, we determined that it was time, and there was enough interest, enough people involved, that we could form a national organization similar to NCECA and GAS. And we got some volunteers, including an administrator, and a little bit of funding from the 130 people who were at that conference, and started a very funky little newsletter, which now, of course, is a multi-page color magazine journal. And because I was elected president, I became the first member, thank you very much, and was president for the first 5 years, and then stayed on a 6th year of a 3-year term in order to be able to guide into the next presidency. I never go to the lathe with an idea of making a particular shape. I do all my drawing with the gouge as I'm shaping a raw form. I do have, obviously, height and diameter, but I'm really looking for that little key that will key into the next phase or next stage. Obviously, like everyone else, I get dead periods, they call it writer's block. What I do when I get into a situation like that is I start sweeping the floor. I just get into the space, and when I sweep the floor, it doesn't matter where I put it. I may put a pile over here and then move the pile over there. It's just being part of that environment. And I'm not looking for any lightning bolts, I'm just looking to be part of that process. Because I think all of us we have the right tools. It's accessing those tools at the right time that guides us into the next direction that we might take. And it's quite magical, and I think of my own work as quite magical at the same time. I think the mystery of approaching an object that has a certain shape and volume and a little tiny hole, and you can't get inside, you can't get your finger in, and yet it's terribly buoyant and levitative in its own right. It has a story, and that story comes through from me to it, from it to someone else. And I want them to interpret it their own way without me getting in the way. And that's part of what leads me from phase to phase and stage to stage in my work. Else. And I think one of the greatest statements I ever heard is that the arts is not a safe place to be. And that's a good one to remember, whether it's a magazine or an organization or an individual maker like myself. We kind of work till we drop. There's no retirement, no bennies, and it's a wonderful life to explore.